right, welcome. We are here with Christian Dye again from Latitude West. We wanted to kind of talk to you more in detail about what you've been up to and how are things going on in your neck of the woods. So I want to just kind of tell me a little bit more about your background and how you got started in the financial industry.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So I actually come from education background. So I taught for over a decade. And I have a math background, so I taught mathematics, calculus, finance, and economics. And when I transitioned, I completed my MBA back in 2008, and I transitioned to the financial industry, and I really, really enjoyed it because my father was in the industry. But the one thing I found was that the industry itself didn't really align with my own goals and my own values because I was a big real estate investor at the time. And so what I decided to do was to see, was there a location where this fit inside the financial industry? And I got started in real estate because my uncle, who is a bit of my mentor, and he was an engineer, and he grew a lot of wealth in real estate. And at a very young age, in my early 20s, I decided to ask him, how did you do this? There's that saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And at the time, there was no internet. So he taught me, showed me what he was doing, everything from buying undervalued properties to also leveraging off of the equity. And the more I learned, of course, he had an engineering background, I had a math background. It was easy for me to do the math and to realize that what he was saying was actually correct.
Right. And
I was going to grow my wealth significantly more using real estate than I was with traditional means such as, the stock market. Right. I was definitely swimming upstream.
Right.
Because the society was putting money in TFSAs and RSPs
right.
in the stock market, and not as many people were investing heavily in real estate. And so when I realized that the math works, and of course you buy your first property, it never really goes perfectly according to plan, but right. You wait a little bit of time, and all of a sudden this property is worth quite a lot of money. Then what I realized that I wanted to buy more. So when I created my financial practice, it was really centered around helping people who wanted to grow their wealth in real estate because I had grown my wealth in real estate.
Right.
And I was around a lot of other people who had grown their wealth in real estate. And I really enjoyed it because we kind of all spoke the same language and our philosophy was now aligned. I transitioned out of education into a financial practice, right. which centered around those real estate investors who want to grow their want to grow their real estate, or they had questions about what to do with their real estate. And what I want to do now is help the average person.
Right.
And that's why I wrote a book. Really, it's not so much for profit. It's really to accommodate to the masses.
Nice. Yeah. So you threw me off when you said before the internet. You don't look that old, but
yeah, no. I was there. I was kind of in college when I was in college where it was just budding, and I was one of those guys of this will never pick up. Let me get back to the library and start searching around. But
who knew?
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so tell me, Latitude West philosophy of investing. How do you differ from traditional? Like if I go into BMO and they set me up with a banker, how do you differ from the average?
Yeah.
Typical investor manager.
Sure. Our styles are actually quite different.
Okay.
And one of the reasons is because I guess the greatest tool they have in their tool belt is the stock market.
Right.
And they're very good at it.
Yeah.
But they tend to stay in their lane. And what I mean by that is they'll have a team that analyzes the market. They'll look for opportunities. They'll sometimes even buy individual stocks, or they'll look at funds like mutual funds.
Right.
They'll take an MER, so that could range anywhere from 1% to 2%, and then they'll grow your wealth that way. You'll come to them and you'll meet with them periodically. But what I found is that typically they will be focused on your portfolio, mm-hmm. how much you should be investing, perhaps your retirement planning, maybe your RESPs for your kids, and that will dominate about 90% of the conversation in that 1 hour meeting twice per year.
Right.
Like, how did I do? What was my rate of return? I have some extra cash. Do you think I should put in TFSAs or RSPs? And then that's kind of the limitations that they have.
Right.
At the higher levels, they start to get a little bit more on the service side where they might have some deeper questions.
Right.
Do I do an estate freeze in order to transfer my wealth? What is the best way for me to minimize taxation? But at that level, I usually find that you're, in the 7 or 8 figures of assets that you have with them, where they have sort of an internal tax team, an internal lawyer. So that's probably the 0.1% of population.
Right.
So and there's usually little to no real estate being discussed at those meetings. So if you said, I'm thinking of buying this rental property in Mexico, or I'm thinking of buying this multi-unit building, usually the conversation doesn't go much further. It says, okay, well, let me know what you're going to do, and then I'll help you with it. Or they might say something like, I can't help you with that. Or even worse, they might even discourage it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know from one of the, I won't name names for the lending, but I think last year the broker didn't touch base very much, and now because the market's up, they're more like, hey,
how's it going?
It's a good time. Those are easier calls when the market's up, right?
Yeah.
They know that they're going to get somebody that's happier rather than like, what the heck's happening?
Yeah. And with our practice, it really is real estate focused.
Right.
So we wanted to create a practice where someone who had a real estate portfolio,
right,
but had questions inside the portfolio, such as, I'm thinking of selling, property A, and there's this other property B that I'm thinking of buying with property A. Do I sell it? Do I leverage against it? Do I get a joint venture? Or is this just a bad idea in general?
right.
And so they didn't have a lot of places to go where somebody spoke their language and somebody could do the analysis and somebody had the same philosophy. So with us, we created Latitude West Financial specifically towards these real estate investors, and so that for a fee for service, we can get those questions answered.
Right.
And furthermore, we could actually help them to buy more real estate.
Right.
And so it's not only about analyzing, but it's also in the same way a traditional financial advisor will say, I found this amazing fund that I think you should invest in. We're saying we found these amazing properties in this area that we think you should invest in. They've got fantastic cap rates, good cash flow based off of everything else that you're doing maybe locally. And so, of course, for them, they were like, well, that's the stuff that I do in my spare time. I'm looking for properties on the weekends or in the evenings. I'm a physician or I'm an engineer. So I in my spare time, I try to find this. I have a relationship with some realtors, and they send me stuff. And so with us, we wanted to be more than just what the realtor does. The realtor sells them real estate.
Yeah.
So first of all, we don't sell any real estate.
Right.
So we don't take a commission off of any real estate.
Right.
What we do is much more similar to an accountant. An accountant charges you a fee for service in order to minimize your taxation, as well as to create a strategy, file your taxes. What we're doing is we're going to do all the financial planning, create the reports, do the insurance analysis, as well as your retirement planning. But at the same time, we're going to be that person that says, here's this amazing real estate property that we think you should buy, and we've already pre-analyzed the numbers, and it basically perfectly fits in your retirement plan. Or we'll say, this property that you're not sure what to do with, this is our opinion of what you should be doing with it.
Yeah, no, that's good because being on the real estate side, of course, I don't see all of that in the background. I mean, we don't really see their financials. We kind of know, okay, you're approved for this. This is what I'm going to show you, based on the parameters of what you want and what you can afford. But it's nice that there's other options that you're exploring as you look at their HELOCs or, whether they can borrow from, mom and dad or those types of things. That's a good service to have.
Yeah. So what we sort of find is that like a really good differentiator for us is because we're fee for service.
Right.
There is a very transparency,
right.
Whereas there's no hidden fee for an investment fund that we're doing. There's no hidden fee. And we do invest money on behalf of clients because sometimes they do need a TFSA,
right.
or because they do want different alternatives for their RSPs. another differentiator aside from the real estate is our private equity investments.
Right. Okay.
And the reason is because we feel that there's way too much exposure to the stock market. And Tony Robbins, the kind of self-help guru,
Right.
recently wrote a book. I don't profit from this, but if you can pick it up,
Yeah.
I believe it's called The Holy Grail of Investing. And in the first couple of chapters, he interviews guys like Ray Dalio, who's the largest hedge fund manager in the world, and he asked them, what is your secret of success? And they said, we have a diversity of 8 to 10 non-correlated assets that all have a certain purpose inside the portfolio.
Right.
So when I research groups like the Tiger 21, and if anyone wants to Google them, they're basically the wealthiest investors in the world. They typically have a $10 million minimum to invest, and the average investor has $100 million.
Right.
But it's a group. And this group, they track the group to say, well, what is this group of people? Because often they're investing on their own.
Right.
It's just a group. So the Tiger 21, they showed that less than 35% of their assets are in the public stock market, but they usually have something similar in the private equity market.
Right.
So you have to be something called EMD license,
Right.
exempt market dealership license, which we are,
Okay.
because we like to diversify, assets. We kind of like 4 asset classes. We like the private equity market. We like the public stock market. We like the real estate market, of course, but direct ownership
Right.
real estate. And we like some form of fixed income. And those 4 non-correlated assets tend to, produce very, very large growth. On the real estate side, if you were to take a look at the math, which is highlighted in my book, there's a 5-to-1 ratio with real estate. If you put a 20% down payment on like $100,000 on a $500,000 property, 80% of it is leveraged against the bank.
Right.
Every percentage that property increases, you go up 5-fold. So if
Right.
it goes up by 10%, your deposit has gone up by 50%,
Yeah.
which is why our numbers are usually in the double digits when we're working with clients.
Right.
And with the stock market, you typically don't leverage against your stocks. You might get a margin call. So usually if you put in $100,000 into the stock market and it goes up by 10%, you've gone up only by 10%. That's it, not by
Right.
50%.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's great because I know you guys put me into some private equities from the REIT side, which I didn't even know some of them existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've heard of the companies, but I didn't know much detail because it's not offered from the traditional way, like you said.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about like what's an ideal client for you guys, and what do you see as an ideal client? It's easy to work with.
Yeah. So I guess for us, an ideal client is someone has a real estate need. If all they were doing was looking to put money into their TFSAs and RSPs, there's probably 1,000 different advisors. So I'd be one of 1,000. If they're looking to grow their wealth in real estate, or if they have real estate questions, even if the question is, what is the best way for me to purchase my first home? Then usually we're a group of not one of 1,000, we're like one of one as an investment team. And so our ideal client, these days, they're coming in with a real estate portfolio. Maybe they own 5 properties, maybe they own 50 properties.
Right.
And they're trying to figure out what is the highest and best usage. A lot of them actually are local. They might be local to Vancouver market or local to Ontario market. Those are kind of 2 areas that we get a lot of our clients from. And Vancouver and Toronto have done very, very well if you invested in real estate over the last 20 years. But now to find a really, really, really good investment property off of 20% down payment, it's probably almost impossible, especially now they've changed Airbnb rules.
Yeah.
And so when they do have cash, or when they have accessibility to equity, such as in the form of their existing properties, they want to know where's the next best place.
Right.
And so with us, we work with them. We could work with them as short as 3 months, or as long as years.
Right.
And what we do is we build a strategy, and it depends on how they use it. Sometimes they just want to use us to analyze all the deals that they're coming across. Sometimes they want us to find those deals.
Right.
Both of those levels of service are the types of clientele that we're working with right now. And we call this, whenever I talk with a client, I use this concept of lift.
Right.
And lift to me is when we do an analysis, we'd say, with what you're doing right now, let's use the example of the stock market. With what you're doing right now, with what you're putting in the stock market, in the next 20 years, you will land around $5 million. And then they'll look at our assumptions and they'll agree with it.
Right.
So for me to charge a fee, I have to have a lift significantly above that 5 million.
Right.
And so what I show them are strategies. I show them properties. I show them multi-units. Maybe they're just buying condos, and I show them multi-units that they didn't even realize that they could buy in areas that they've never even heard of. And then and then if they agree with the assumptions, then they say, you know, with our strategy working with you over the next 10 years, our lift will be in the area of 20 million.
Right.
So if I do it on my own with what I'm doing right now, that's 5 million. If I work with you and pay you a fee, your lift is an extra 15 million. And so we won't even work with a client if we know that we can't give them some form of a lift.
Right.
You know, regardless of what the fee is.
Yeah.
And the reason why we do that is because if we can't add that value, we know they'll be upset at the end of the process
Right.
of our time together, and we'll be upset at the end of it. So there is a bit of a vetting process that we do before we work with a client.
That's good. No, that's interesting. I mean, most of the financial advisors sort of, I don't want to say steer away from real estate, but they definitely don't mention it, you know, or very little, you know. So it's interesting that yours is more focused on real estate, where the traditional one is sort of, you know,
absolutely. Because and I think you know, most of the financial advisors that I know, because I'm in this industry, they actually do a really, really great job. If that's what you're looking for,
right?
If you're looking to grow your wealth in a stock portfolio, then they're going to do most of them will do a very, very good job.
Right.
But if you're looking to grow your wealth in a real estate portfolio, you want to align yourself with with basically a financial team that will support that growth.
Right.
Either on the analysis side or on the finding side. And we're not replacing the realtor.
Right.
We're not replacing the mortgage broker. We're working with them.
Right.
Because they're going to be feeding information, but, you know, for the client, they're going to want, in the same way that if you being a realtor says, here's this really great property, you're going to have to cash out your RSPs in order to buy it, but you're going to do much better come retirement, they might take that and go to their accountant to double check that. Now, the accountant will understand incredibly a lot about the tax implications.
Right.
But the accountant might not have a real estate lens.
Right.
They might not be taking into account the cash flow from the rents. They might not be taking into account the ability to leverage against it to buy even more real estate.
No, they're looking at penalties and like...
Exactly. Oh, you're going to have to cash out your RSPs right now. You're going to pay a penalty on this, and then there'll be a huge capital gain later for your kids. Okay, well, wait a minute. A huge capital gain means that you've made a lot of money.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas the real estate focused financial advisor will be able to look at that and say, here is the net effect of you doing this.
Right.
And so what I found is, you know, the accountants that I found are also really, you know, good at what they do, but it's the same thing. They kind of stay in their lane. And if anyone out there is a real estate investor and they were thinking of investing more in real estate, I would double check to see how much your team supports this. So, for example, the accountant, if you're owning multiple properties and you're growing your wealth with even more properties, and you find that your accountant seems to be pushing back on this and encouraging you not to do this, you might ask them, how many properties do you own yourself? And if they say, I just own my house, that's probably why. I've gone through several accountants, unfortunately, except the one that I have now owns properties. Owns multiple properties, understands my view of owning properties, and never discourages me from owning properties. And it's just like a physician or a mechanic. They're not all the same.
Right.
You want one that aligns with you. You want a financial advisor that aligns with your philosophy. You want an accountant that aligns with your philosophy. You want, you know, realtors that align with your philosophy as well.
Makes sense. One accountant that doesn't question your write-offs. No, that's a...
Exactly.
It's a business lunch. And then what inspired you to write your book, Break the Wealth Ceiling?
Sure. I actually, I brought a copy of it here. So Break Your Wealth Ceiling. It's how ordinary people can create extraordinary wealth with real estate. It's funny, when I wrote it and I published it on Amazon, Amazon priced it quite high.
Right.
And I thought, you know, the higher you price it, the fewer people that are gonna read it. So I actually had to go through, you know, quite a few hoops just to bring the price down.
Okay.
It really wasn't meant so that I could make some,
Right.
book of the month club on Oprah Winfrey type of thing. It was really meant as a message as to how did myself and people of similar philosophy and my clients, how do we grow all of this wealth in real estate?
Right.
And we call ourselves just ordinary people. Remember my first career was as an educator, as a teacher. I didn't start investing in real estate when I started my financial practice. I started investing in real estate when I was 20s, when I was basically in university getting my teaching degree.
Right.
And then I started to build it from there. So it's filled with really good stories. There are these three gentlemen that I work with in the school system. I call them the three wise men. One was the art teacher, one was a math teacher, and one was the high school counselor.
Okay.
And all of them had similar stories. They all started early. They all created wealth through real estate. They all had regular jobs. They leveraged off of the wealth from the real estate to buy even more real estate. And then they all retired early. One of them is actually still teaching, more or less just for the fun of it.
Right.
Except this person could have retired 5 years ago.
Right.
And in Break Your Wealth Ceiling, I define what wealth is. And I feel that wealth is when you choose to work, when you don't have to work.
Right.
And when you could set up 2 generations
Right.
with housing and education. You don't want to pay for their entire lifestyle, but what a head start if you either have gifted them the down payment of their home or gifted them the full home fully paid itself. And if you can do this for 2 generations and have them finish schooling with no student loans.
Yes.
So all you're doing is giving them this huge lift as well.
Yeah.
You're giving them a massive head start so that they could follow careers of passion, not careers of necessity, so they could live in the area where maybe they grew up in or where they want to live. And so the book it's a little bit of a formula in how they're going to get there. And then there's one chapter that my editor felt should be a book on its own. So that's why I'm working on a second book. So the one chapter is called How Will Our Children Be Able to Afford a Home
That's a good
in
one.
Canada? It's specifically relevant for people in the Vancouver and Toronto area because one of the things that I did with my math background is I calculated something called the household income to housing price.
Right.
So it's a ratio.
Okay.
So a balanced city would be 1 to 3.
Okay.
So what that means is if 2 people, we'll call them high school teachers, both making $50,000 per year, that's $100,000 household income. Their single family home would be $300,000.
Where do you get that? Not here.
Exactly. So there are areas in Canada, not many, that have that ratio, as well as the U.S.
Okay.
Now, Canada's average is closer to 6 to 1, because you've got places like Vancouver, Toronto pulling it up, and you've got sort of rural areas pulling it down. Vancouver specifically is the highest in the country and one of the highest in the world at 14 to 1.
Wow.
So and you might even find that low because $100,000 household income means a $1.4 million property. You're probably saying, Christian, that's not a single family house.
Yeah,
it's just an average.
Right.
So the problem, so this is a massive problem for today. But what I've done in the book is that I grew average household income using a 50-year average, and I've also grown average housing price here locally in BC, as well as Toronto, as well as in Canada. We're looking for you and my children right now at a 25 to 1 ratio for them.
Which is so crazy.
Which is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
So right now there's a struggle for young people. When I say young people, I'll call it the 22-year-old that just graduated and decided to marry their college partner.
Right.
Okay, so now that couple who will, in today's numbers are making maybe $100,000, $120,000 starting income. They're not swimming up a river. They're swimming against a massive tidal wave. So we're talking about if they were to do it on their own without the help of parents or someone else, they're going to be launched well into their 30s, even 40s, or never be able to buy. And that's with 60% of their income just going towards saving up for the down payment.
Right.
So this next book actually comes up with solutions. Now,
Great.
unfortunately, it's
Yeah.
not written yet, but I do have the solutions. So there's 5 different solutions that I mathematically calculated how they can basically get there faster.
Right.
And then it sometimes will involve someone else, like parents or family,
Right.
but we don't want to shoot them in the foot by them having to give up
Yeah.
their retirement.
Right.
So what we've done is we've tried to come up with win-win scenarios and how to structure them.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we see it all the time, and yeah, I mean, I'm scared for my own kids. How are they going to afford to stay in Vancouver? And it doesn't look good for being in a detached house, which is fine in a way. I mean, people living in condos and townhomes, that might be the new norm. I mean, most of the builders aren't even buying building single family homes now because it doesn't make sense for them. But I think, and I've read the book, and it's a good book. We've handed out to clients as well, and we've got some positive feedback. I think the earlier you start, the better. We've kind of touched on that on the podcast, and I know you've touched on it in the book. But I think most people don't know how to get started, or how much they need to save, or these other options of leveraging, HELOCs and other things. So that's the issue. But I think, people need to start early, and they need to understand their options early, because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be.
Yeah, like I think with us, like imagine you coming in fresh as you and your wife come in and said,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we've got some young kids and we've got good income and we want a financial plan.
Right.
Again, I'm going to compare myself to a traditional financial advisor.
Right.
They might say, well, how old are your children? A 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. Do they have an RESP yet? No. Okay, well, why don't we start there?
Okay.
Do you have do you have pension? Okay, my wife has pension, I don't.
Right.
Okay, let's look at our RSPs, all right? Short-term savings, okay, why don't we set up a TFSA? So that over there we'll call it a base case.
Right.
I would look at it differently.
Mm-hmm.
I would say something like, do you own your home?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, we own our home. Great. We've got that one. Are we going to upgrade this home one day? He says, oh yeah, because this home is maybe a townhouse or
Right.
something of that sort. Then I might say something like, there's probably 5 different ways that your children could fund their education.
Right.
How many ways can you think that your kids could buy a home?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to think they could save up, or we can help them out. So let's call it 2 different
Yeah.
ways. It says, okay, so which is going to be the larger problem for you?
Right.
My daughter right now is in BCIT. My other daughter will probably go to, one of the local universities. I think tuition ranges somewhere between maybe $5,000 or $7,000.
Okay. Yeah.
Something like that. It's actually quite reasonable.
Manageable.
It's quite reasonable. But the down payment on a 2-bedroom condo in our neighborhood in North Vancouver, okay, so we'll call it a $700,000-$800,000, even a 10% down payment on that, or 5%, plus they got to carry the mortgage. So at the income level that they might be at, which let's call it average income level, they might need at least $200,000 to $300,000. And I have 3 children.
Right. Yeah.
So that over there right away to me is a larger problem than them affording to go to BCIT in 18 years from now.
Yeah, exactly.
And how can we get in front of that? And when it comes to, let's say you say, well, is it a good idea to take $50,000 and put it as a down payment on a small condo, and it might not even be in BC,
Right.
or locally, and then use the equity, and that equity will then be the down payment for my child in 20 years from now.
Right.
Is that a good idea, or should I leave the $50,000 in my TFSAs? So often what I'll find is a traditional advisor might not be able to answer that question,
Right.
or might not even be incentivized
Right.
to answer that question. Whereas for us, that is a real estate question. And we could do a comparison to say, here's where you'll be in 20 years if you did this. Here's where you'll be in 20 years if you did that. And the question gets even more complex when people say, I have, $800,000 in my RRSPs. I have $100,000 in my TFSAs. I have $2 million of equity in my home. And I have 2 children who don't own a home yet in their 20s.
Right.
What is the best way for me to help them? I could just give them my TFSAs.
Yeah.
Or I could give them half of my RSPs, and now instead of me retiring with X, I now have to retire with Y.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a real estate problem.
Right.
And I still have yet to find a team that basically will solve that exact question and present it to the client
Right.
in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
They might give like an opinion, like, here's my opinion of what you could do. Whereas we would say, we need time to analyze this, but we will come with a numerical answer as to what you should do and why you should do it. And that's, I think, a big differentiator.
You got to show them a brochure for Saskatoon.
Yes, exactly.
Nice this time of year.
Exactly. And what I'm finding is I've experienced it in our practice, and it's one of the reasons why I feel that I want to write the second book.
Right.
And when you mentioned Saskatoon and joking,
right.
I think all of the Saskatoon people are now
right.
upset. All three of them.
It's good there, yeah.
But one of the chapters in the new book is called, "Do you want to walk, drive, or fly to visit your grandchildren?"
Right.
So your unborn grandchildren right now,
right.
if you say, well, Christian, I don't think I want to fly to see them twice per year. I think I'd rather visit them twice per week.
Right.
Then how will your children, not your grandchildren, how will your children be able to afford housing so that you could stay close to them? Or are you moving to Saskatoon in order to be close to them? And the thing is, oftentimes when we have children or when we think of our finances, we usually have maybe a 1 to 5 year lens, possibly a retirement lens as well. We often forget about the next generation, how we want them to live and how close we want them to be. It's never in the past been as big of a problem because we've never had the ratio, 14-to-1 ratio that we have now.
Yeah.
And so it's when you get advice from the generation above you, they'll often that won't be on their radar, because they may have had high interest rates in the 80s. They may have gone through some downturns in housing, but nothing like what we're experiencing now.
Oh, the interesting thing is I have this conversation with some of my friends that don't have kids, and I'm saying, we got to also make sure our kids that we help them at least a down payment. And they're like, why? We never got help. I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't 14. We're buying our first places for a few $100,000, not, a few million.
That's right.
So I think, how are they going to do it without help?
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, you touched on the education portion. I mean, obviously you want to save for the kids' school. That's a factor, but I think AI, everything is changing so quickly too. The school landscape may look different by the time my kids go to school. Like maybe a lot of it will be AI where they're just watching an instructor on the laptop, so you're not paying, as much money to go to UBC or, BCIT and stuff too. So I think I would kind of agree, if you can help them out with the real estate portion, we can figure out the school stuff.
Exactly, exactly. And it's amazing how many different forms of education there are now, but how many so if you said I could learn online, I could I could take a home study course, I could not get an education at all, a formal education, and I could still be successful.
Right. Yeah.
But when it comes to housing, you're a renter, you're a buyer. There's really not a lot of movement, and that's not going to change in the next generation.
No.
20 years from now, education will look different. Our workforce will look different. Things that aren't even a career now are going to be a career different, but housing will not.
It's not. Yeah.
Housing is not going to change. The banking system is not going to change. And you brought up a really good point there, because I am now the converted. When my wife and I first got married, we didn't get any down payment help. We got a lot of help in other ways, but we didn't get any direct down payment help. So we did it on our own. We saved up on our own. We actually, the years that I made the sacrifice of, I was renting, and I decided to move back in with family for 2 years.
Wow.
While I was engaged, so that I could save up for my wedding, my down payment, and pay off my student loan. So in 3 years, I had a down payment, my portion of the wedding, as well as student loans paid off in 3 years by living at home on a teacher salary. Today, you are not going to get a down payment in 3 years by living at home. and pay off your student loans and pay off for a third of wedding. So right off the bat, that argument of, well, I did it, so this next generation should do it as well. It's wrong.
No,
its
yeah,
thinking
you
is
can't
wrong.
compare.
Not if the goal is for them to buy a home
Right.
in a timely fashion. And so I've done the math, and in this next book, it's going to show the math, and then it's going to revert back. And I've come across clients and also sort of people at kind of dinner parties when I talk about this, and there are actually some people who have the wealth, but they're saying, I did it, but I think my child could do it. I paid for their education, but really I want them to build up their own wealth for housing. And I'll ask, well, what career are they in? Oh, they're an engineer. They're this. Well, how many years do you think they'll have that down payment? He says, well, it took me 3 years. I think they should do it in 3 years. And I'm doing the math in my head. And he says, by the time they have the down payment for what they're trying to buy, let's call it a 2-bedroom condo, the price of the 2-bedroom condo will have appreciated more than their down payment.
Yeah.
And then so you're not actually saving any. You're just barely getting in and paying an even more astronomical mortgage.
Right. So I mean, that's the key thing. Get in early. Even though yours was before the internet, we can.
Yes.
But still, we got earlier the better. Earlier the better is the key. No, it's interesting. I mean, it's not the same comparison. I know I've had that before too from my mom. Like, oh, why don't you do this or that when I was your age? Well,
that's right.
Again, the house was $400,000 or $300,000.
That's right.
Not a few million.
Yeah. And the thing is, one of the things that I've been doing with clients is, and this is another thing that I think that differentiates my practice from other practices. I get creative with the real estate. So there's a creativity, and I think the creativity that I bring, I'm almost positive the accountant is not going to bring this to the table, or the financial advisor at the bank is not going to bring this to the table. But again, I have a 20-year view. So oftentimes I might be something like, what is your next home going to be? And they're like, oh, we're thinking of going from a house to a townhouse. And then I might say, well, why don't we pull a little bit more from our savings and RSPs, and why don't we jump to the house with a suite in it?
Right.
And then they might say, oh, okay, but we don't need that much house. I says, I know you don't need that much house now,
right?
But you'll have options later with a 20-year view, because I know with me and my kids right now, I'm looking at, the house that I bought gives me options, because when I went from a townhouse to a house, I went with a house with actually a large footprint of land.
Right.
And so with all the rezoning that's happening right now, plus they're allowing the suites, and this was 14 years ago. I didn't know that there'd be approved on the 4plexes and the 6plexes now that we bypassed that. But right away, now I have all these options. If I stayed inside my townhouse, there is no option. But now that I have this, now I'm a couple of years away from finishing off my mortgage, but I've got 3 daughters, all still teenagers. If I go 10 years from now, and if my wife wants to keep them on the North Shore close to us, that house has options. We can reopen the suite, which we've eliminated. We had a rental suite, but now we've eliminated. We could double check with our zoning to see if we could build a coach home on it. We could actually extend onto the house, because I know we haven't used up our entire footprint. Or we can get my daughters and their partners to potentially go in with us on a build. And the build might be, okay, we have the land, we're zoned for putting a 4plex or let's say a 2 up and down, and you're gonna pay for the build of one, and we'll pay for the build of the other, and we'll live in that other one. We can maybe generate some rent from the one, but you now own this because we've pre-inherited the land of your inheritance. And that's what I mean by now I'm getting creative, having that longer view. Another one with this one particular client who is essentially has a condo, but the kids have come to a point where they really want a house.
Right.
They don't have enough money for the house. Adult parents, retired parents are trying the best way to do it. We're actually doing the math to see, the mortgage broker said there's a chip mortgage, a reverse mortgage. But we've heard bad things about that. We're not sure if that's a good idea or not.
Right.
Me, I don't I'm not incentivized to get that chip mortgage.
Right.
But what I can do is I can analyze to see if that's a good
That makes
idea
sense, yeah.
and what's a creative strategy, such as, well, what are you planning on doing with the equity of your home as well as your other assets when you pass away? We have 3 children. We're going to divide it equally among the children. Okay, you're just in your early 70s. You probably won't pass away for at least another 10 years from now. Why don't I do the math to see if we could take an early inheritance off of the chip?
Yeah.
But wait a minute, we also have a line of credit. Okay, well, why don't I compare you taking the line of credit to help child number 1 versus taking a chip off a child for that same child? And now, who's your executor, and who's going to control the will? Because now we just have to make an adjustment that they've already gotten a portion of their inheritance early, but it's going to be so much more significant because these children are in those growth stages. They're sort of middle school or elementary school, but they really wanted a yard. They didn't want to stay in a townhouse.
Yeah.
And now you're able to give this gift without shooting yourself in the foot for your retirement.
Yeah.
But who is the advisor that understands this, is able to analyze this? And I think there's a segment of the population that needs an advisor that for the service that we're giving here at Latitude.
No, it's interesting. The zoning stuff is so huge too. Not to get into too much detail, but like my house too. I mean, I'm in East Van. I got 8,000 square foot lot. If I wasn't in a house, I wouldn't have the same options too. Like you were saying, we could build with family or take out more equity now. And we've been saying for years, if you can afford a house, even though you may not need it today, get in, because you're going to have these options down the road, which is now happening. So some of these people are sitting on gold mines, like even where Wayne lives, that's zoned for high rises. These houses in 10 years are probably going to be 4 or 5 million.
Yeah.
And, if you're in a townhouse, it's going to go up in value, but not like that. So
Yeah.
a lot of people are laughing. So if you own land in the Lower Mainland, keep your land and you have options. So.
You've got options. And I kind of find for young people, again, going back to that creativity, you get the brother and the sister, both of them got college degrees. They're about 2 years apart. Individually, they probably can't afford to buy a place.
Right.
So what do? They rent. But maybe the two of them together can co-own something that only one of them lives in.
Right.
But they co-own it. And I've seen this model where someone says, okay, instead of renting, I'm going to own. We're going to co-invest. You're going to get your money back out.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, one of them ends up partnering up and maybe getting married.
Right.
The partner in them restructure the loan so that the other person gets their money out, but they didn't have to buy a property because they already had the property. So let's say that's 5 years later. Well, the one sibling is now in the property with their partner. The other sibling gained the equity of the property and is able to take that equity and potentially do something on their own. But essentially what they're doing is they're using time to their advantage.
Right.
At 22 years old, I can't buy anything, so what am I going to do? I'm going to rent. Well, let's get creative.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't do anything on your own, but maybe you with parents or you with sibling could do something together. I've always said the 3 mistakes of real estate, and you've heard me say this before. Mistake number 1 is, I should have bought earlier.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. He says, yeah, but I'm 22 years old. I'm saving up for down payment. I'm trying to buy as early as possible. Well, are you?
Right.
Can we utilize parents? Can we as soon as you could afford a mortgage, then I think you need to get creative on how you're going to get the down payment.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a duplex on Vancouver Island that I own with a long-term client and friend, and just like you say, thinking outside the box, like, he had a bunch of money from some stuff that we sold for him, and I had some stuff sitting, and I said, well, why don't we do this together? I mean, obviously don't go out and buy something with someone that you don't know, or,
right.
know, and family, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
But, we have a partnership agreement in place, so we know kind of what happens in these scenarios, these exit strategies. Then I think it's great. We've had it for 4 years. We haven't had any issues. So, it's just a matter of having those conversations and looking at outside the box, which is what you can help clients with too.
Absolutely, and what I found is that another value is when I talk about the 3 mistakes. Is mistake number 2 is selling too early. You sometimes get in these scenarios where they're getting information from somewhere. It says, oh, you should really sell this property because it's worth a lot of money. And then they'll take the equity, and then sometimes they'll put it back on the stock market or they'll spend it.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that if you've done this, you've made a mistake, but what I am saying is the majority of people that I know that have done this, and you talk with them 5 years later or 10 years later, and you ask them, would you have done it again? They often say, worst mistake of my life.
Right.
Because they saw the value of it 10 years later. You know, they said, you know, the best for me, the only time I really want to sell real estate is if I'm buying another piece of real estate, because then I don't have regret, because the second piece was usually more expensive than the first. So I could kind of say, well, I couldn't have bought the second without the first, so I had to sell. But if anyone's out there listening and they kind of say, yeah, you know what, 10 years ago I did have a piece of real estate, I did sell it.
Yeah.
And then now I see the value of it, and I ask myself, could I have held it? If you couldn't have held it, then that's one thing. But if you could have held it, and that's a terrible thing with divorce too, because oftentimes that they'll sell a property, they'll take their equity, and what I've seen is sometimes they won't do anything with the equity except to rent or to use it for other means. They say, oh, I made all this money, but then 10 years later, they still don't own a home.
Yeah.
They look back at the value of the property of the home that they sold, and then they realize how expensive that divorce actually really was. Even if they just considered 50% of the equity as theirs, they've really kind of cut themselves off at the kneecaps in their wealth growth, because that's a capital gains tax free. Whereas if they would have pulled out their equity, burned it through rent, or if they reinvested it somewhere, there might not be the same tax efficiency.
Yeah, we've seen some of those examples actually. First, I have some clients. I think their funds are still in the lawyer's trust account because they're still, sorting it out. I think some of it's been several years now.
Oh, geez,
years. Yeah, so it's like,
wow.
if you're that whole process can take a long time. So it's not always just we take our cash and go our separate ways. You got to sort out all the other things too. So yeah, divorce is never good, but it's less costly not to.
And it's funny because I almost, if I was working with a couple, I would almost be creative and say, is there any way we can keep the home? And say, you buying out the other, or pulling out the equity, or maybe even just keeping the asset as joint ownership, but neither of you live in it. Maybe neither, like, is there any possible way to keep the home? And I've had clients come to me that way, where usually one of them wants to keep the home. The other one wants to sell it so they can get their equity out. They bring me in to say, is there any way that I myself can keep this home? So we've gotten very, very creative there, and of course with co-investing with parents. So then you suddenly say, well, here's one way. What do your parents do for their investments? And they might say, oh, they've got, I'm not sure exactly, but let me go ask them. They'll come back and they said they've got $1 million with an advisor out in some bank. And then says, well, what's their rate of return? And then you might say, well, they're getting 7 to 8% around there. It says, well, let's run a model to say, if they co-invested, bought out your partner, co-invested with you, and let's build out the model for 10 years. And then let's say with their investment, which will grow at the same rate that the home grows at, but now they have equity ownership. In 10 years, you might now be in a position where the mortgage is small enough where you could refinance it, or you might get another partner. Your partner might come in with you, or at the very, very least, you've held it for another 10 years and sell it then. Sell it in 10. Like, you're going to be better selling it off in 10 than selling it now. For sure. And now you get a larger portion of equity. Your parents get back this portion that would have done the same, if not better. They've helped out their child. Partner, ex-partner got their equity out. It's a win-win-win. And I'm just not sure. Like, that is an area of specialization where we can get creative with what our team is doing.
Real estate.
Because we want to hold the real estate.
It's always a long game. We always say that. We always say, look at least 5 years, and that's always, for the most part, proven to be good and good returns for the clients. So
like a question that clients will ask of me, and they'll say is, is now a good time to buy? Like, is 2024 leading into 2025? Is that a good time to buy real estate? And some people will say, wait, because the rates are going down. Other people will say, it's still too high, wait till it goes lower. But but
Can't time it.
I've done the analysis, and number one, you shouldn't time real estate.
It's too hard to.
But at the same time, I was just recently in front of an audience, and it was a real estate audience, and that question came up: is now a good time to buy? And the question I asked them was, I want you to tell me the worst year to buy real estate in the last 20 years. The worst year, if you were to cherry pick the worst year.
Yeah.
And then right away, some people yelled out 2008. And I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
And then someone else yelled out, no, buddy, that was the best time to buy it because everything was cheap. It says, okay, then 2007, right when it was at peak. And then I paused on that one. I says, okay, let's land on 2007 when it was at its peak.
Right.
If you bought in 2007 and you didn't sell, and you held that property today in 2014, do you regret buying in 2007? They're going to be, no, of course not. The place is worth a fortune.
Yeah.
So if that was the worst year to buy and it was still good, then the argument is there is no bad year.
Exactly.
There's different products, and there's some years are better than others,
course,
but there actually is no bad year. And there's some products that are worse than others. You don't want some negative cash flowing product that's bleeding you to death.
Right.
But the thing is, from a timing perspective, there actually is no bad year.
Right.
If you find something with a deal that makes sense, I'll pay a 12% interest rate on something that works.
It works, yeah.
You know, I'll put 38% down payment on something that works. It really is about what it is you're buying and not the time that it is that you're buying it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, we're seeing a lot of panic right now in the pre-sale market because there's so much inventory. Actually, even out here too, just almost across the street, a lot of people that bought, weren't expecting their rates to be as high, or their situation has changed in their job and incomes. A lot of people are trying to fire sale their, pre-sale condos. But same kind of thing. If you keep it long term and ride it out, then you're going to do well. Where there, now you might take a loss. So.
See, again, another good example. If someone was negative cash flowing in any way. Okay, so now the question is, do I sell?
Right.
Some guy's going to take the assignment, or I can get out. I'm going to lose a little bit here. That's a perfect question that you would want an advisor to help you with.
Look at it and see.
To basically say, I'm on the verge of making, I could be on the verge of making a really big mistake.
Right.
I'm about to lose a $30,000 deposit, but if I hold on to it, I'm negative cash flow $700 a month.
Right.
Okay, is it a good idea for me to sell or not? So few teams have the ability to answer that question or incentivized to answer that question.
Right.
And we get questions like that, and we could analyze the living hell out of it. We could do a cost-benefit analysis as to what are your alternatives. We could basically figure out the net present value of holding on to it. We could figure out what the future cash flows are going to be. So, and remember, what is our philosophy? Hold real estate as long as possible.
Right.
Because because that is our philosophy, and of course this person probably it's their philosophy as well. If I say sell, that means you should really sell.
Right. Yeah.
Like I'm usually someone says hold and buy more.
Right.
So if I say sell, then you've got that confidence that you really, really, really need to sell. How to contact us. We work primarily with individuals and companies across Canada based on a fee-for-service model. If you are interested in learning more about working with us, we look forward to connecting with you. Please visit our website at www.latitude-west.ca.